Hey everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here. I'm going to do a hot take on Vince Vaughn and conservative Hollywood. Conservative Hollywood is a thing. Vince Vaughn is we in the Libertarian Party sort of have glommed onto him for a lot of years. He was a big Ron Paul supporter, and his values are pretty well aligned with the Libertarians. Also, Drew Carey, and but that's the only two off the top of my head. I think there are more. Well, you got Dave Smith, who you may or may not know. He's a libertarian comedian, and probably you could count Doug Stanhope, who you might know. Um, and there are a few conservative celebrities. Arnold Schwarzenegger was famously Republican back in the 80s. When he became governor, he was kind of a California Republican, which is kind of a more woke Republican, really. Um, but he was in the party. Bruce Willis, conservative, and James Woods, and those are the only ones I could think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's a few more, but a lot of people in Hollywood, as I said before in other videos, they stay below the radar, especially with their politics, and they should because of the reaction this recent event with Vince Vaughn. So Vince Vaughn was at, I guess it was a football game that the president was also at, and they met, and there's video of them shaking hands and just being cordial and chatting. People, of course, on Twitter are freaking out over Vince Vaughn, and they're looking to cancel Vince Vaughn and all this other nonsense. It's very silly. The idea that you can't have a cordial conversation with someone who you disagree with politically, and you can. He may very well disagree with Trump's policies. I don't know. I haven't heard him talk specifically about Trump. As a libertarian, if he holds similar views to me, he probably sees Trump as a mixed bag. There's a lot of things that we're pretty excited about, but we're not very excited by the drone strike or the stuff going on in Saudi Arabia and Yemen. But who knows? The point is, people on Twitter get bent out of shape about everything anyway. But this could, unfortunately, hurt his career a little bit. Hopefully, Vince Vaughn can sort of just weather that storm. At this point in history, the woke nonsense of cancel culture and people trying to cancel Ricky Gervais after his hosting duties on the Golden Globes. It's not. It's people are really getting sick of it. It's becoming less and less a thing. So I think Vince will probably be fine. Maybe there's a handful of producers out there who may not use him because of this, but I doubt it. At the end of the day, it's all about money and fame, and Vince Vaughn is still pretty famous, and it's been in some pretty big movies, so I think he's fine. And again, you don't know what he said to the president, and you can't really be a jerk when you're a celebrity and an actor out in public. I mean, you can't be a jerk to anybody. I'm not a giant celebrity, but I have my fans. In the world of comics and books and whatnot. I have to be cordial to them. It's not that I don't want to be a cordial person, but I've had some fans who were a little rude or annoyed me in some way, and I suck it up and I'm nice to them anyway, because when you go out in the public and you use your public persona, that's what people expect. You can't be rude to somebody. Look, if you're just your average Joe and some barista at Starbucks snubs you, and you tell her off, it's no big deal. But if you're a celebrity or a public person and you do that, and it gets on the internet, or even if it just gets around, people start talking about it, that could hurt your career, could hurt your sales. It can, people don't like to hear that about people. They read about or watch movies. They don't like to hear, oh, that person's a jerk. I mean, after the stuff came out about Kevin Spacey, a lot of people were very shocked. I was, I didn't realize Kevin Spacey was doing stuff that he was accused of. And once you heard about it, then it kind of puts his work in a different light. And it also makes you think twice before you're going to, go to a movie or watch a TV show starring that person. Stephen King is making a lot of noise on Twitter. He's very woke, not conservative. And, it kind of, for me, makes me wary of projects he's involved with now. Because my worry would be like, oh, is this going to be a woke bunch of nonsense that I'm not going to like? And is he going to preach to me? So, it's all about whether or not you're preachy and self-righteous, I think. Vince Vaughn just met the president. So what? It'd be different if he met the president and then went on Twitter and, went on a tirade about Trump and how great he was and how everybody who doesn't like him is a jerk. He didn't do that. If he did, then I'd be like, yeah, Vince, why don't you calm down? But, he just met the president in a public space. What's he supposed to do? Slap his hand away and yell at him? That's not going to happen. And I'd find it hard to believe that most people would act that way. The people who say they would act that way, in my view, they're just saying, oh, if it was me, I'd punch him in the nose. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't, because you're not as brave as you think you are. You can say that because you're never going to get the opportunity. But, Vince Vaughn has a career. It's way more complicated than just meeting Donald Trump. It's a public event, and he doesn't want to look like a jerk to any of his supporters. So he did exactly what a person in his position should do. He was cordial, he wasn't fawning, and he said hi to the President of the United States. The idea that he's some sort of monster as compared to previous presidents, that is definitely over-exaggerated, and, that is caused a great imbalance in the country thanks to the media hype over it. Most of the people screaming about President Trump and calling him a dictator and all these nasty things are the sort of people who are easily swayed by television news. Their diet of news is pretty one-sided, and they want to believe the worst in Trump because they don't like him. It's easy to believe the worst in someone if you don't like them. You'll believe things. I talked to somebody tonight who just blamed Trump for almost everything. And it happened during the Obama administration. People on the other side of Obama were blaming him for stuff he had nothing to do with. Every bad thing that happened was suddenly, oh, thanks, Obama. The president can only do so much or influence so much. Yes, they do things that are bad, and maybe you disagree with them. I certainly disagreed with Obama, and I disagree with some things that Trump does, but we have to keep it in perspective. A true dictator, puts people up against the wall and shoots them. That's what dictators do. Dictators seize power without congressional approval, or, they do things on their own, and Congress is, or the parliament is just a sick joke. We're not anywhere near that level. And the tiny steps we've taken towards that level has been, the Democrats have been very complicit in that. It happened a lot during the Bush administration. It happened during the Obama administration. So the Democrats do not care about that sort of authoritarian measures. They only care that the Republicans and Trump have that power. That's it. Full stop. There's a handful of Democrats that are good about the Constitution, but most of them just aren't. They're just in it for the power, and they could care less about the nitty-gritty of the Constitution of the United States. If they did, they would be more consistent in their views. And you could tell by people's voting record and what they've said. Tulsi Gabbard's been relatively consistent, and that's why people like her. I don't agree with everything she says, but, her foreign policy's views are pretty good, and she did actually help Trump during the early days, and she crossed the aisle to do that. And for that, she should be lauded. Instead, they try to punish her for it. So, but conservative Hollywood does exist, and and the people who are conservative should not be punished for their views at their job either. It's discriminatory and makes no sense because Hollywood is also, like Washington, becoming very one-sided, and the tunnel vision is hurting. Wokeness is hurting Hollywood. It's hurting its projects, and it's going to force them to adopt more anti-woke sort of stances simply because that's going to be the popular thing. So imagine all these liberal celebrities forced to say all this anti-woke stuff that they really don't believe. It's going to be interesting in the next few years in Hollywood. Interesting.